Five, four, three, two, one. My brother from another mother, Scoop Jackson from the Chicago Sun-Times, joins us right now as we continue. And dude, we haven't talked in like forever, and there's a myriad of things that's going on. So I'm getting ready to just
Right.
load up the chamber
That's
and
what
start firing at you. All right.
that's what scared me because I'm like, man, I have no idea what Mark is gonna throw at me. So I
Well,
just have to,
now
right.
since you're with the Sun Times, I'm playing shamelessly to the Chicago audience. Are
No,
you
you don't
buying the
have to.
Cubs as a real NL contender? And if so, do you really think they in the Tarek Skubal
You
sweepstakes?
you really asking me this with my joint on? You really
I
gonna
am
ask me
because,
about the
with
Cubs?
all due
Come on,
respect,
man.
man, they're your socks are like my Orioles. All right.
Nah, your Orioles haven't hit the bottom like we did for the last couple of years. Our bottom was different. Our bottom has been historic. So to come up the way we have this season, it's crazy. No disrespect to your Orioles, but y'all ain't hit rock bottom like we had. y'all don't know those depths.
You haven't been there. But seriously, what's the buzz with the Cubs around town? I know Chicago's a better summer when the Cubs are winning, right?
Well, it's a better summer for some individuals.
Oh,
Mark, you've been in many times. This city has been deemed one of the most segregated cities in this country. And when it comes to sports, that reality kind of plays itself out because baseball, as far as we're concerned, is split from a geographical standpoint. It all depends on what side of town you're from. So, us on the south side, no disrespect, we really don't give a damn. What the summer is like, what happened with the Cubs, on the other side of Roosevelt Road. We don't care. So and they don't the Cubs fans on the north side, they can give three, four, five, six F's about what's happening over here.
right.
And even like if the Sox, even back in 2005, one of my favorite stories is that one of my best friends, my god brother, he was a Cubs fan, Southside dude, right? I'm a Sox fan. When the Sox were in the World Series, they were playing Houston for Game 4 to sweep to win the series. I'm I happen to be here in Chicago during the time and not covering it because I'm still with ESPN, and that was my first year with ESPN. So we're like, okay, let's go to Wrigley because that's where all the bars are. Let's go to Wrigley, because let's go to a bar to get that atmosphere because this is still about Chicago. And Chicago has not won a baseball World Series in forever. So we got to be where the atmosphere is. So we go down to Wrigley Field, right there on the corner to the main spot, right in the hub of everything. Man, we were able to park my car right in front. Like on game days and Cub days, the parking lot that is across the street at least cost you $50.
Right.
We parked there for free. Dude was like, nah, y'all, yeah, just leave it right here. I got it. Walked into the bar, Mark. There may have been like 8 people in there. Like, and my friend, again, my guy was a Cubs fan, he said, man, I never knew Cubs fans' hatred for the Sox went this deep. He was like, I thought, once we played against each other, or it was like this regular season was over, that's always there. But once one team is out and one team is in for the World Series, it becomes a Chicago thing. That's what we thought. Because at least on the South Side, you're not going to see that level of hatred.
Right.
The Cubs, we went in there, we walked in there with 8 people in the Cubby Bear. Like, that's it. We damn near had the bar to ourselves. And he literally apologized to me for the whole case. He said, man, I am sorry, dude. I didn't know our hatred ran this deep. I said, yeah, it does. So I tell you that story to put in perspective and put in context when you're asking me what's going on the north side, because the summers are always better in Chicago when the Cubs. No, the summers are better on the north side and the north suburbs. You know what I'm saying? No, no, no,
Right.
no. This is not the Bears. This is not the Blackhawks. You know what I'm
not,
saying? This is
not the
not the
Bulls.
Bulls. Right. This is not the thing where the whole city galvanizes itself during the regular seasons if the Cubs are playing well during the summer. It's a great time for what's going on the north side. But I'll say this. from a reporter and a journalist perspective that has to cover all sports in Chicago, that right now everything is hinging on what happens with the Cubs before this deadline ends, and if they're going to get somebody in their rotation.
Well, the rumor is Tarek Skubal. As a baseball guy, I'm gonna tell you right now, they in the sweepstakes. Have you heard anything different?
I've heard his name floating around, but I keep hearing his name going to the Dodgers, of course, or going to the Milwaukee Brewers. Because this roster needs something. But why put he and Miz in that same lineup? They could definitely challenge the Dodgers with
that's what I'm saying
on the hill in the 7-game series. But those are the two teams I keep hearing. But Mark, you know as well as I do, and baseball does a better job at this than basketball does, I believe, because they don't seem as thirsty. It's hard to trust journalists at trade deadlines because, one, they never reveal where they're getting the information from, and two, you don't know if their information is legit to the direct relation of what they're talking about. 3, they have to grab and pull names in order to get clicks and eyes on their stuff, and that's led by editors and executive editors who force them to come with some type of information. And 4, half of the guys that are in this business, and you know this well, are not really good at their job and need all the help they can get when it comes to reporting and writing.
And breaking stuff,
So they feel their content with either quotes or just information that they know has no legs to it. But they know it's disposable because there's so much information going out there that whatever they decide to include for their content is meaningless. It's almost like they're weather people. Like, weather person can be wrong 95% of the time and still retain their job. And if they get fired, they'll find another job just because they're meteorologists. It doesn't make it, the accuracy means nothing. And around this time of year in sports, everybody has a trading deadline. It's hard for me to fall into believing what is being written because there's so many stories going on. And baseball,
you know something? I'm glad you brought that up. I'm glad you brought that up. We're talking with Scoop Jackson from the Chicago Sun-Times. You remember from back in the days at Cold Pizza at ESPN. But what was it like that though for the basketball trade deadline? And I want to also circle the wagons and talk to you about the way LeBron and his crew handled that. To me, when I look at what Rock Nation is doing and these Nepo babies, they got control of the league. Scoop, how'd that happen?
Well, it happened because of the orbit that LeBron basically established once he entered into the game as the Sun. You know, he made sure everybody and everything was revolving around him. He did a masterful job of getting his people in place, making them do their due diligence so that he could run himself as an incorporation, as a business, more than just a brand. You know, I think he knew the branding was coming, but he wanted to run himself as LeBron Inc. He looked at what Michael Jordan and Magic Johnson had been able to do. You know, I don't know if he went as far as looking at what like Julius Erving and Dave Bing had done, but he definitely looked at what Michael Jordan and Magic Johnson had done to put incorporated, you know, behind their names, and build post their basketball careers. And he did a good job. I remember writing about that when he let go of the Goodwin brothers as his agents and hired his squad to represent him. I was questioning that. I wrote an article questioning that. It actually had a kind of put a dent in the relationship that we had for a while. Because I'm looking at, man, you right now as I think maybe a second year or something like that. Whatever, man, you are right now, your worth is about $200 million right now. And you're letting go of cats who have been in this business to run your business forever. They're legacy pieces, black legacy pieces in this business. And you're letting them go and replacing them with cats who have no acumen in what it is they're trying to do and you're trying to do, because all of you all are learning on the fly. All of you all are around 20, if not under 20 years old at the time. You know, this is a big risk. And if anything else, you have to have somebody established in place as an insurance policy in case something goes wrong. You need somebody to handle damage control. It's not just about contracts. And I question, not whether it's a smart move or not, but I question, and not even the competency. I just questioned the decision at that time for him. What I didn't know with LeBron was that he was going to be smart enough. Okay, Randy, you go to school and learn this because this is what you wanted to do. Rich, you go and learn this and get your, get your come ups.
Yeah.
Get your license, find it because this is what you want to do. Maverick, you want to do this? Get qualified, get certified to be able to do this. He actually sent everybody out to do their due diligence so that in a couple of years, they'd all be established, they'd all be accredited, they'd all be credentialed. That would make them official. No bullshit. They did their things, and LeBron said, let me handle this. And together, us four, the four horsemen,
right,
we can do this. So that's the orbit that I'm talking about. That's the sun that LeBron established that became where everybody else became an orbit around it.
Yeah, it became the universe.
Right, exactly. but that's including the Kevin Durant's and the Steph Curry's. You know what I'm saying? So after that happens, the league becomes easy because, and once again, going to the LeBron, ethos of all of this, at the time, the one thing he didn't have was a good relationship with ESPN. Again, I was there. He found a way to parlay that relationship back. And once he got ESPN to, I use Stephen A's word, acquiesce to him, the same way he got kind of like Dan Gilbert to acquiesce to him in his return to Cleveland. Once he was able to parlay that decent relationship with ESPN, everything else was easy. Because now he had a media component attached to the portfolio that he was building. And once you get your people in place, your business in place, and you're seeing your mission, as he said to, I think he said to Bill Walton or something like that, or he said it publicly, and Bill Walton harped on that he wanted to be the first billionaire athlete.
He did say that, yes.
Right? Okay. So once you're sitting on $200 million as your value, and now your IP in your mind is $1 billion, and you're 20 years old, but now you're trying to self-contain all of that within your own circle. Once you get the media partner to take that ride with you, everything else is easy. Because, no disrespect, the NBA is not as large as ESPN. And when ESPN became his de facto media partner, that's how the league wound up following him. And that's how the league became a planet in his orbit, as opposed to the other way around. So you got to understand, all this stuff was strategized.
Yeah, great
by
strategy.
LeBron, and it's been playing itself out over the last probably 18 years.
Hey, Scoop, how big an influence?
That's how it gets on. That's how it gets to this point, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, how big of an influence was Jay-Z on this? Is that overrated, overstated?
I don't think so, but I do think that at this point, it's more counsel,
right?
Than it is him actually being hands-on and being in the group. I think the same way I think World Wide West is counsel at this point. I think Leon Rose is counsel at this point. I think Warren Buffett is counsel at this point. I don't want to take anything away from what LeBron and Maverick and Rich and Randy have been able to do to establish themselves as legitimate and respectable businessmen in this industry, in this space. And I'm not just talking about basketball, I'm talking about the cultural space too. Because all of us in the cultural business to a certain degree.
Right.
And cultural business is not usually phrased like that, but cultural business is a billions on top of billions on top of billions on top of $1 billion business that is global. And they have created their own space in this culture business, along with in this basketball business. So I don't want to say that what Jay-Z has been able to do in his lane, as far as the culture business is concerned, but I think, the Four Horsemen and LeBron James Inc. have done a well enough job over the last 18, 19 years to not have to run to Jay-Z to do anything else but counsel.
Right.
Like I said, he has other people in this that have acted as guides to lead them to do this. So I think, you know, Jay-Z's counsel in this particular situation was somewhat important, because he can give perspective outside of what they are intaking for directly being involved in the NBA, as opposed to Jay-Z's relationship with the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
I think LeBron, if you look at Jay-Z's relationship in the NFL, it kind of starts, and I don't want to say ends with, but it basically starts and functions through his relationship with Roger Goodell. At least that's the way it seems. LeBron James, and I don't want to exclude Randy and Rich and Maverick from this, but LeBron James has probably a similar, if not deeper, relationship with Adam Silver.
True.
You know what I'm saying?
That's why Adam can come out a couple of weeks ago and say LeBron signed so that we can get our schedule out.
Right. That's how that comes about. And Adam Silver understands the power that LeBron James carries. The same way David Stern had to learn the power that Michael Jordan carried.
Jordan had, yep.
Right, but David was reluctant to, you know, acknowledge that level of power. You know, David still functioned, from my understanding and my belief and my dealings with him, in a way that, Michael, you are big, but this league is still bigger than you. I think Adam Silver understands that this is a relationship of equity with the league and LeBron James. You get what I'm saying?
I do.
And
yes.
So I think that's a large part of how LeBron is able to establish and do what he's able to do, you know, and why Jay-Z just becomes counsel, because you can look at the relationship that he's built with Roger Goodell and the things they've been able to do and the things that have, you know, been culturally included into the NFL that weren't around before Jay stepped in. And I think because his relationship with Adam Silver is a little bit deep, I think LeBron has been able to do things from a similar cultural perspective, but one that revolves around him with Adam Silver, because Adam Silver has a greater understanding of the power that LeBron James holds than David Stern did, and probably more than Roger Goodell does with Jay-Z.
As we continue, Scoop Jackson with us from the Chicago Sun-Times, ESPN alum, much like myself. I got to ask you about, you know, the Ryan Clark thing.
I knew that was coming.
There have been so many different angles to it, from him being too woke to the arrogance of the, you know, management types. Somewhere in the middle there is the truth. And to me, it's a guy that was a part of, what, 3 years, 3 Emmys on NFL Live, stuff like that. I mean, the proof is in the pudding. Tremendous podcast. Why do you think that slipped off the tracks?
I mean, if you go back, it's one of those things, Mark, for me, that is hard to. It's the struggle we all have as being Black folks in this country. It's hard to not pigeonhole certain things that happen to us because of our overqualifications in so many of these spaces, that when things go another direction, that I don't want to say we victimize ourselves, but we point directly to our race and our culture and who we are as to why that thing happened, without taking in consideration that those things happen to almost the same degree to a little bit of everybody. But the thing we have to grapple with, the thing we have to accept, is that it impacts us more. So while you look at the individuals who were let go at ESPN at the same time that Ryan was, you know, including like somebody like KARL RAVECH.
Yeah, which is a killer for me as a baseball guy.
But Mark, this one I want to get it, because everybody is seeing that we got in on the caveat in the Ryan Clark story about how he was informed.
That's it.
About his fight. He was on air, and apparently another outlet was holding ESPN hostage with that information. And basically, from what I read and what I understand, they gave them a timeline a timestamp actually, like of when, if they don't let him know before this time, this is going to happen. And from my understanding, ESPN had for half a more hour to do this, so they could tell him when the show was over, and the outlet said, no, you got to do it by now, or we're going to let this information go. Now, we all know that, excuse my language, that's fucked up. It's fucked up, bottom line. But here's the thing. KARL RAVECH, let me preface this. Ryan Clark had been at ESPN for 11 years.
Right.
KARL RAVECH had been there 33 years.
He had been. You're right.
Do you know how KARL RAVECH found out?
It was something similar. I forgot the specifics, though.
Very much. He got off air and read it in Forbes. Nobody at ESPN, right? He read it. So here's my point. We're in outrage about how Ryan Clark was and claimed that because he was black, that he was treated this way. A guy who had been there 3 times as long as he was, white, one of the good old boys, basically found out in a way that was very, very similar. Not as egregious, not as effed up, but very similar. So that's why I wrestle with this, is that we as black folks, it goes back, I keep talking about it, I keep bringing this up because I think it's one of the most important theories we have in Black American society. It's the duality that W.E.B. Du Bois spoke about us being African and being an American. At the same time, we're going to have to deal with that duality. We're going to have to wrestle with how we exist in this space, because we have empirical evidence that can say, hey, Ryan Clark got treated basically the same way KARL RAVECH did. Race had nothing to do with this, especially if you look at the history. Somebody's there 11 years, somebody at 33 years. They both got fucked over in the way that they got released, right?
Right.
But the other side, we know how it is when it comes to us in these spaces, and when it comes to how white individuals, especially in corporate America, treat us. And we are not naive or ignorant enough to not add that at all times. So, as you said in your thing, because you explained both extremes in this, you said somewhere in the middle of the truth. I'll push back on you on that. Why can't both extremes be the truth?
True.
You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do.
So,
I do.
Right. So,
you know, I guess I'm a little sensitive because I was that black guy that kind of got, released in that same fashion, much like you. But when you start bringing up a legend, and that's how I look at KARL RAVECH. I mean,
right.
what he's done to transition from anchor, he was a less enthusiastic Chris Berman, if you will, right? The way he seamlessly transitioned from behind the desk to play-by-play, and was a great listen. So yeah, man, your heart aches for all of them. It just seems weird because we saw, if you're watching First Take, how Ryan Clark is gone in the middle of the show. That was kind of jarring.
But once again, here's the thing. I love talking about this. Here's the thing. One, we cannot take this out of context. I mean, we can if we want to. If we want to continue to feel good about ourselves, if we want to continue to be like, hey, you know what? This is how we always get treated, which is true. But I never want to lose context. And the context in this particular situation was that the information about Ryan Clark his words, I think he said he was let go. I think he used to let go. I don't think he used the word fired. I thought somebody said fired. In the information of Ryan Clark being let go, I think came out on Friday. But they weren't told because they were waiting until Monday. But the information got leaked. Somebody inside of those ESPN circles. Now let's keep this.
Of course.
Let's keep this $5. All right. Somebody inside of ESPN, that executive suite, that C-suite, those people who make decisions on whose contract gets renewed, whose contract doesn't. Are we taking Pat McAfee off of a talent contract and giving him a production contract now? Those same people. You know what I'm saying?
I do.
In the room with Magnus Burke and Jimmy Patero, those level of people who know that somebody in that orbit gave that information out to Outkick. who is basically one of ESPN's
outliers.
nemesis.
Yeah. Oh, you're right.
Right. That's one of their nemesis. So how Outkick got this information before they were able to release it needs to be the context in which we have this conversation around.
Right.
Because come Monday, Outkick was the one that said, if you don't let them know, we're releasing this list by 5 o'clock on Monday. ESPN, from what I understand, asked, can we have until 5:30? They said no. So technically, ESPN was in a hostage negotiation over internal information. That's how Ryan Clark found out. That's how
KARL RAVECH found out.
KARL RAVECH found out. Because they were being hostage. So that context needs to be clear and understood if we're going to have some type of constructive conversation on Ryan Clark and including KARL RAVECH in their situations of how they were let go from ESPN. The bigger thing is, to me, because I think the way they got let go is jacked up, and it says something about ESPN and how they function when it comes to
it says a lot about the character of the network now, which is totally different than when we were there. You know, and I look at the whole programming and journalistic side of it. You know what I'm saying? It's a lot more entertainment. It's a lot more screen TV than it was when, you know, we had stuff like the sports reporters. You know what I mean? I mean,
the whole landscape changed because, like you said, it's more screens, more entertainment than it is like actual news, and that's fine because media is still a business. It does have a responsibility, but it's still a business at first. So whatever they can generate, whatever they can do to generate more income through advertising or eyeballs, either one, whatever they can generate, that's what they're going to lean to. And that's fine because this is still a business. And that's to me a part of the large part of this context is that we lose sight that this is a business. And most business, if we walk into these situations and expect business, especially at this level of corporate America, to be nice, then we're the ones. And that was one of the biggest problems I had with Ryan's reaction. And I don't know what it's like to be a professional athlete. I don't know what it's like to play for an organization or organizations that generate millions and billions of dollars and to be a trusted individual inside their organization. But I've been in enough spaces in this country to know that when you deal with businesses of that size, especially the business of media, where the demand for your talent and your contribution is very different than it is when you play in the NFL or the NBA. Your services are not necessarily the same. When you enter this and you lose sight of who you are, that's where you begin to fail. That's where you begin to lose. And I thought, and it wasn't about Ryan Clark's wokeness, because you could be woke, but you can still not be aware. And Ryan Clark's wokeness, as they like to call it, was a breath of fresh air in this medium. But you can't be so woke that you are unaware about where the fuck you are and who the fuck you is in the room with you. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You got to right. So his reaction, I was uncomfortable with because I had empathy for him, but what overrode my empathy was, dude, you can't forget who the hell you are in this space. None of us can. You get what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. None of us can. Look, Rob Parker can't, Jamil Hill can't, Jalen Rose can't, Cam Newton can't, Scoop Jackson can't, Mark Gray can't. No. You know what I'm saying? We cannot get lost in this situation. The only black person at Disney right now that can afford to not get lost, and he never will, but can afford to get like, you know, that's them. I'm a different brother. That's Ryan Coogler. You get what I'm saying?
Yep.
He's the only one that is above the fray of being reminded that you are black in a corporate business inside of America.
Wow.
Once
So
he
you
decided that
saying
that's what
Ryan Coogler's got more juice than Stephen A.
way more.
Okay.
And Disney, way more. Stephen A is responsible for one network, one TV show and one network inside of the entire Disney profile. It's
That
an
true?
important one. Right. But Stephen A doesn't have the power to bring in the type of billions through film. And that you got to keep in mind, Disney is a film company. That is
It
the
is.
parent company. You get what I'm saying? ESPN and ABC, those are the sister companies. Disney is a film company. Ryan Coogler is, for lack of a better term, Steven Spielberg in this bitch. Right at this point, right? You know
Right.
what I'm saying?
Yep.
So,
He is.
but right, and he has the wherewithal to not work with them and affect their business model in a way that if Stephen A decides not to work with ESPN, it affects them less than it does if Ryan decided, hey, you know what?
Yeah.
Yeah, get somebody else to do like Black Panther. Get somebody. I've shown you what I can do in non-Disney spaces if I want to. And now he's established something that Stephen A never did, and that's established rights and ownership to his film.
Point well taken. Yeah.
The return he got on his investment in Sinners, that's what bothered white people so much. Like, how could that brother make that type of deal? It was the same thing that happened to Michael Jackson when he started getting dollars off of his album sales with his situation with Sony. How can you do that? How can you now own the Beatles catalog? You know, when you get to that far up, that's when you become a problem. But that's when, once again, kind of like LeBron is, you start creating your own orbit.
Yeah.
You know, and Ryan to me is the only one that is creating a black orbit of Disney. Like
In Hollywood,
Stephen A may be Earth in that orbit.
Okay.
He may be the second most important planet in that orbit. But as far as Disney, when it comes to black is concerned, Ryan Coogler is the fucking sun. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
He's the only one. But I say that to say none of us are Ryan Coogler right now.
No.
So we cannot get at ESPN, or we cannot get at ABC, or we cannot get either inside of Disney and look at our track record and get comfortable and forget who we are in these spaces. We cannot get comfortable and forget that
True that.
At the end of the day, there's either, I don't want to say what I want to say.
Everybody's expendable.
Well, yeah.
Well, just about everybody in this new space that they're getting. But
it's always been that way. And I'll try to keep it specific to media, Mark, so I can roll back what I was going to say.
Yeah, we got about a minute and a half to go.
No. But the media space is different. And I've written about this. And a friend of ours, and I use friend lightly, a friend of ours disagreed with my approach on this. You know, and it goes back to the percentage of us when it comes to reporting in this business called sports media. We still hover around 3 or 4% in this game. You get what I'm saying? Especially when it comes to decision-making positions in this sport. You know, you see a few black spaces, but when you see these black spaces, you don't look at the overall landscape of what sports media looks like and how vast and big it is and how few of us are in it. Like I said, our autobiography should be raisins in a bowl of milk. You know, there aren't many of us. But we have to understand that we are hardly ever going to be accepted as equals or partners in these spaces, and we should never get comfortable enough that we think that we are. And
hold that thought. We're going, because I'm coming up against it. I got to take this break. I may want to recycle something and come back to you. That's the incomparable Scoop Jackson, boys and girls, from the Chicago Sun-Times and veteran ESPN contributor from back in the day. It's OG Sports Rap on the network. Download the mobile app, Sports Rap Network. We all we got.